A two-day gathering. Leaders from Southeast Asia are gathering in Southern California. U.S. President Barack Obama is hosting the two-day gathering of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. Goals include promoting regional security and development. Participants also want to boost economic ties and strengthen the largest trade pact in the world. Leaders will also address shared challenges, including the South China Sea disputes. CCTV's Jessica Stone joins us from the summit with the very latest. Jessica?
And Mike, you have to keep in context that the U.S. ASEAN Summit is happening just 2 weeks after that freedom of navigation patrol by the U.S. Navy within Chinese claimed territorial waters, as well as those waters are also claimed by other countries as well. But all of this happening just 2 weeks after that incident, it did incur a lot of condemnation from Beijing. And even though China is not invited to this summit, it definitely looms large on the agenda.
3 years ago, U.S. President Barack Obama and Chinese President Xi Jinping met at this California resort, aiming to improve relations. This year, Obama will use the venue to rally China's Southeast Asian neighbors to counter its influence in the South China Sea.
How big is the concern in the region?
The concern is very, very big because South China Sea is a very hot spot.
A hotspot because China and its neighbors have competing territorial claims over these islands, which are still unresolved. Nevertheless, China has built at least 3 airstrips on reefs in 2 of the region's island chains.
China is resolutely committed to safeguarding the peace and stability of the South China Sea and will continue to manage disagreements through dialogue.
China wants those dialogues to happen bilaterally, but the 4 counter-claimants in ASEAN, a group of Southeast Asian nations, have pushed a collective approach to ensure ships can freely travel these waters. So far, it has failed.
Maybe it's not the best place to talk about that issue, but ASEAN is, I think, the only available platform.
The White House wants ASEAN to support free navigation in the South China Sea, and it's pumping more than $150 million into the region to help counter-claimants strengthen their naval military power. Beijing has not inhibited any ship's passage to date, but the stakes are high. An estimated $5 trillion in trade travels through these waters every year.
If the South China Sea is restricted in terms of commercial or military movements, the first people who are going to suffer are going to be the Southeast Asian coastal states themselves.
The U.S. has pledged to send military aircraft and warships to the region in freedom of navigation patrols, the most recent just 2 weeks ago near an island claimed by China.
I think these operations are not inherently provocative. What they should be is seen as routine and low-key.
But Beijing sees the patrols as a clear violation of its sovereignty and says countries outside the region should, quote, stop meddling.
China has the right to protect its sovereign territory and its legitimate maritime rights.
Now, of course, even as ASEAN struggles to come up with a unified approach to a common code of conduct in the region, or even a freedom of navigation supportive statement, the Philippines and Vietnam, they're taking matters into their own hands. They both filed complaints at the UN and at The Hague. Back to you.
Now, the U.S. is pushing for a strong joint statement from these member nations on the South China Sea. How likely is that?
Right. Well, you know, there isn't really consensus yet on that particular issue in terms of very strong language. 4 of the ASEAN members are claimants. That leaves 6 that are not. And this model of ASEAN is to have complete consensus to make any decision. In speaking with some of the delegations, there's obviously a lot of support from the Philippines delegation for some stronger language, but also in speaking with the Myanmar delegation, they don't believe that there will be stronger language as the U.S. is looking for.